So I got a lot of people saying they wanted to hear me talk about obsessive compulsive disorder and my bout with it when I was like 11 or so, I think. Somewhere between 10 and 12, which, there we go, found an answer. 10 and 12, right in between there, that's 11. There we go, I'm already smarter than I was 18 seconds ago. Figured something out. So, I guess that's like 5th grade, it's probably right. OCD for me, I wasn't one of the really terrible severe cases, but I was bad enough that it irritates me when people pretend that they have OCD and they're like, oh my goodness, I just have to organize my pencils and that's just so funny. I'm just so obsessive compulsive, and oh, if my plate isn't set up just right, I just freak out, and I probably wash my hands like 3 times a day. Oh my goodness. And people who play it up like that, because that's really not what it is. It's really a terrible disorder if you have it. And when I was young, I did struggle with it, and the way I got over it eventually was I was on medicine for a while, but then I got off the medicine, and strangely enough, a few months after I got off the medicine, which is when you would expect a relapse, is when I stopped, exhibiting symptoms really, and I just kind of overcame it. And still, every once in a while, I guess I haven't in the last few years, but I'll still have an OCD moment, but I can conquer it now and not have to worry about it. So, OCD, a little bit of background. What is it? Obsessive compulsive disorder. It is essentially when you obsess over something to the point that you feel a compulsion to act on it. Most of these obsessions have to do with being afraid of something or anxious. So an example might be I would have the random thought that would pop in my head that if I didn't take my mom's fine china and break it out in the woods at night, that my dog's going to be dead when I wake up tomorrow morning. And the thing about it is, and that's just one example, there are tons and tons of them that I that I had over the year, I guess. And I did do that. I did take a china plate and break it out in the woods. That was one of the times that I did cave to the compulsion. Nobody found out. No big deal. Hopefully my mom doesn't watch this and she's not mad. As far as the compulsions go, as I said, usually they have to do with fear or anxiety and trying to prevent something bad. Very rarely are they about acquiring something good. It's all on the defensive and trying to, just keep the suffering to a bare minimum, so to speak. And another one of these, the biggest one for me, had to do with a fear that myself or my family members and my loved ones or friends would burn in hell for all eternity. I was still young. My parents raised me religiously, and I went to private school, and so I was totally in the Christian wagon at the time, and I was absolutely horrified that people I love would be tortured for all eternity. And so I would constantly have these compulsions, like, for instance, if I don't trip my brother down the stairs, my mom's going to burn in hell. And it doesn't make any sense, and you realize at the time it doesn't make any sense. And the problem with it isn't the thought of tripping your brother down the stairs, because on an internal level, I knew that I had no desire whatsoever to hurt him. I had no desire. It wasn't in me. I didn't want to. So it's not as though I have issues with, the weird thoughts that are associated with OCD, because deep down, at least me, I can't speak for everyone who has had the disorder, I didn't feel an actual desire to act on any of them. For me, it was always on the defensive. I didn't actually want to do any violent things. That was what terrorized me so much. But that wasn't what made me feel guilty and stuff. What made me just feel bad and shitty all the time was just how much your mind focuses on these myopic, stupid, just infinitesimally just ridiculous things that don't matter whatsoever. And the people who joke around about it, I mean, when they joke around, they probably mean they spent 10 minutes organizing something tops. I mean, I'm talking that I would spend entire days doing worthless, menial tasks for no reason. I remember one night I spent 8 hours after school just organizing a bucket of Legos for no reason whatsoever. It was just a random bucket of Legos that my brother had. There was no reason to do it at all, because we just play in it and rummage around in it and mix them all up anyway. There was no reason. But I spent all night doing it just because I was afraid of something. I don't even remember what, if I didn't do it. So that's the frustration of it, just how much time you waste. Also stuff like just sitting in class, you can't focus. You're constantly worried about making sure that everything's balanced, if that's your thing, or that you don't look at anyone, or whatever the case may be, because it's difficult to give examples, because really, these things are just so obscenely random that you can't even make it up. That really is how it is. So I figured I may as well end this little section of me talking about my OCD by giving a funny story of a time in which I gave in to one of these temptations, and I enjoyed it rather thoroughly, at least initially. And it goes back to 5th grade, as I said, and we were playing dodgeball in gym that day. And when you're playing dodgeball with 5th graders, boys and girls, you have to make sure that you're not playing across a whole basketball court. You have to make sure that instead of kids being able to back up all the way to the baseline, you need to make sure that kids are only able to back up to, say, the 3-point line, to make sure that kids are staying closer, because little girls and undeveloped boys can't throw very far. I was fortunate enough, however, to be much larger than most of the guys at this age, and so I could throw the ball pretty well. And I was really, really not good at throwing anything, and any of my friends can attest to this who have seen me try to throw a football or try to throw a baseball. It's really, really embarrassing, actually. But there was just something about those old, they don't use them anymore kind of dodgeballs, because they're kind of hard, rough, brittle, just, grippy plastic. They're very, very durable kind of balls. And they fit really well in your hand. And as with any kind of dodgeball game, there were like 10 balls out there, of which like friggin' 1 or 2 were good. The rest of them were just shit balls that nobody wanted. So by complete happenstance, I get one of the good balls. And the kid who's on the other team across from me, because I was playing pretty aggressively and so was he, and we'll call him Trevor, because there's no reason for me to make up names, but I have fun doing it, so we're going to oblige that as well. So this kid, Trevor, had an infamous habit of really getting passionate about games and PE, but sucking ass at all of them and being annoying as shit in the process. And I've had just a random compulsion just standing there, just gazing across at him during that game where I had that ball in my hand, where I had that red ball in my hand, and I just had this compulsion. I just had to hit him in the face with the ball, or I just knew that my mom was going to die in a car crash on the way to pick me up. And I once again, the second that thought pops into your mind, doesn't make any goddamn sense. You immediately write it off as ridiculous, but you can't stop thinking about it. It just swarms over you. And for once, instead of just dealing with it, I just thought, screw it, and said like the 5th grade version of like, fuck that, and just decided to haul ass out and just beat him right in the face. And I just wound up so hard after getting as close as humanly possible, like within atoms of girth, away from the middle line that you weren't allowed to touch without getting in trouble. Like, you have to have an electron microscope to see how close I was to not cheating. And I got up there and just went back, and every just fiber of my being was taut with energy. Every just ounce of oomph that I had was thrown into this ball. This ball was going so goddamn fast. I swear to God, if you had a picture, I would have looked like a freaking Super Saiyan just throwing that ball. As soon as I threw it, the whole freaking auditorium, the whole gym, which also was an auditorium, just bam, sonic boom, girls falling over all over the place. But not Trevor, almost said his real name there, not Trevor. That ball was soaring towards him like a freaking cannonball. Hits him square in the schnoz. Not in the right cheek, not in the left cheek, square in the schnoz, 100% right in the face. And at that moment, when it hit him, and the air and just compressed on his face, and I could see the displeasure and the grimace, and as that ball ricocheted off of his head, and that resounding, just whinnying, just resonance of the air inside the ball was just, making that hum in the air, and everybody was kind of silent, looking at the ramifications of my wondrous toss. I felt great. I felt wonderful. I was just on top of the world. And then, I guess 2 seconds later, I looked back and realized that I hit that kid so hard in the face that he got blood on a red rubber dodgeball. Now that is my claim to fame, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. And it's just a coincidence that it actually has to do with OCD, which, if the person who happens to be Trevor is listening, and you know who you are, no, you probably don't, my bad. So, anyway, that ends the segment of this video wherein I will be talking about goofy things and my personal experiences with OCD, as I hopefully covered sufficiently. If you guys have any more questions, please leave a comment. But I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about it now. And I'm going to talk about it more from the perspective of treatment and potential ways that you can help your anxiety or depression or OCD, because I'm sure there are some of you out there who have OCD or depression or anxiety, because that's just freaking statistics. I guarantee it. I mean, if I have had OCD and depression and anxiety issues, you guys have had to have one. I mean, Jesus Christ, there's lots of you. So basically, the way that you've treated these issues with medicine over time has, of course, evolved, as with technology, and the older ways are falling by the wayside. The first ones, antidepressants, at least the first of those, I believe, were the tricyclic antidepressants, and those aren't really used anymore because not that they're overtly dangerous, but they have a lot more potentially detrimental side effects than those that we use currently. In addition to that, another early one was the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, and those are still used today sometimes, but not very often, since they do have a pretty big risk involved, and usually they save that as kind of like the last resort, just in case everything else fails. So those are the two ones that we don't really use anymore of the four that I'm going to talk about. And then it brings us to benzodiazepines and SSRIs. And benzodiazepines are, they really vary a lot. It really depends what you need it for. You can have a really powerful and quick-acting benzodiazepine for insomnia, if you really have trouble sleeping and you just need to get knocked out. Or if you struggle with anxiety, you can have, a lesser dose that's I guess, extended released over the period of X amount of hours. And so benzodiazepines are more used for panic disorders. I didn't take a benzodiazepine ever because I had panic attacks, but there's a big difference between having a panic attack and having a panic disorder, since obviously just one panic attack does not necessitate panic disorder. That would be silly. Seems like everybody would have a panic disorder if that was the case. So that's more for panic disorders, not, just what I had. What I had is more generally treated with what's known as an SSRI. And an SSRI stands for Selective Serotonin Reuptake Inhibitor. And I'm going to try and explain, at least kind of well. I mean, I'm not a teacher, so bear with me. And if at any point I say something incorrect, please correct me, because I want to make sure I'm giving you guys accurate information. I won't be mad, I promise, as long as you make sure that you're correcting me with the correct information. So the SSRI, Selective Serotonin Reuptake Inhibitor, it works by manipulating the amount of serotonin that's available for use in your brain. Just like benzodiazepines, they work with the neurotransmitter GABA, which is gamma-aminobutyric acid. It's a different neurotransmitter for a different function. Just like GABA is, think of it like a different flavor of ice cream than serotonin. God, what a bad example. So SSRIs are much safer, a lot less severe side effects, and the side effects that you do get, usually they don't show up severely. Maybe you'll get a couple cases of someone who loses a lot of weight or someone who gains a lot of weight, but for the most part it's not too bad. It's bearable. The SSRIs that I took were paroxetine and fluoxetine, which are Prozac and Paxil respectively, and I'm going to try now to explain how the drug works, and I'm kind of hesitant about it. I probably should have spent more time trying to think what I was going to say, but whatever. So, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Now, think about it like this. Think about serotonins as little he and she serotonins, and they are just little school kids, okay? And you just are angry because you just came back from a movie with Hayden Christensen in it, and you are furious. You are so angry, your mood is elevated, you are freaking out. And so your brain decides, hey, we got to get some serotonin up in this bitch and get this guy's mood regulated right quick. That's how brains talk. And so your brain, your neurons, send out some serotonin into the synapse. The neuron sends the serotonin out into the synapse to be taken by a neurotransmitter transporter, a very creative name, over to an adjacent cell for transport and usage. And obviously this is happening much faster than I can articulate. And think of those little he and she serotonins like they're waiting for a bus, right? They're waiting to get picked up by this neurotransmitter transporter. They're all waiting there. Oh, they want to get picked up. They want to get picked up. And finally the bus arrives, which in reality, I guess in their time, it must be a long time. I don't know. They're not sentient. Don't worry about it. So they all get on the bus. And unfortunately, the bus fills up, and the bus has to leave because they got to get the hell out of there because it's a fast route. And so all the he and she serotonins that could get on there ship off away to their destination, and the rest of the serotonins are just sitting around waiting. Now, if you have a normal brain and you're not struggling with these issues, or rather you're not taking SSRIs, that serotonin that's left will quickly be reuptaken into the neuron from whence it came. Sounds like something Gandalf would say. And if you are taking SSRIs, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, sorry about that, think about it. Think about the words. What do you think it's going to do? Think about it. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Anybody? Anybody? No? All right, it's okay. I'll tell you. So the SSRI essentially acts by preventing the excess serotonin from being from going through the reuptake process and being put back in the neuron for later use. And by doing so, they effectively increase the amount of available serotonin in the brain. And so instead of someone who is depressed and they don't have much serotonin, instead of those little he and she serotonins getting taken back and hidden, deep in a neuron, they get to chill out there and sit on the curb and wait for the next bus to make sure that your mood is a little bit more balanced and a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? So I really hope that bus analogy made sense. So if you guys have any more questions about this, please let me know. I am no expert by any means, but this stuff does interest me. I really like it. So if this interests you as well, feel free to leave a comment. And if you just enjoyed the part of the video where I was making jokes and being ridiculous, then hey, come on, man. Come on. This was way harder to do than that earlier part. Give me some respect, eh? Anyway, love you.